We are back in your life, and today we're talking about how you're living the dream. You're a first home buyer, then you want to upgrade, and you go, my first home, that'd be a good investment property. And then they get themselves in an absolute mess. Michael, this was your idea. I'm sure you run into this all the time when you've got people going from their first home to their next home.
I know, yeah, it is. And there's a lot of conflicting information out there. And even we give conflicting information out, right? We're like, we hate selling assets. You got to hang on to the assets. Yeah. And now I'm telling you not to hang on to the asset because you're hanging on to the wrong asset. So a lot of people end up as accidental property investors when they buy their first home and they go, you know what? I love this home. Someone else is going to love this home. I want to buy my next home though. Family's getting bigger, need a change, want to live in a better area, earning a bit more dosh, can afford a bit of a better house. So they rent that first property out instead of selling it and then buying another investment property. And, again, it's not the wrong thing to do. It's just not the best thing to do.
Yeah. And I think people go, I enjoyed living here. Like, it's a good neighborhood. You tell yourself you'll hold it long term and it'll go up in value. It's already paid down a bit, so it feels a little bit more safe. You've heard property always goes up.
Absolutely.
But what are the issues with this, Mike? Why is this ends up being a bad idea for so many Kiwis?
Yeah, cool. And again, we're not saying that it's a terrible idea in every single scenario. There will be scenarios where your first home does make a good investment property.
I'd say 8 out of 10 though, like it's a bad idea.
Yeah, pretty much, right? And the crux of the argument is very seldom does a first home make a good rental property, right? And we also see this when people go, I might buy an investment property, but I want to live in it in the future, right? Again, those properties are never really the best investment properties because you're trying to fill two kind of sides of the coin. So in terms of why are they bad, first thing is the yield, right? Very rarely is your quasi-investment property going to outperform a pure investment property in terms of the yield. And for everyone out there who's going, Mike, what's a yield? James, tell them what a yield is.
It's the rent for a year divided by the value of a house. And if you are under 4%, usually that's pretty bad.
Yep.
I've seen yields as low as 2%. Sometimes I go and I'll look at it and be like, is your family living in here? And they go, how can you tell? And I'm like, I'm a mind reader.
Yeah.
Rental yields, a big one. And I think the big thing when it comes to that, right, is the reason you decide to buy a property is just different in terms of the initial transaction. The first one is going, do I want to live here? An investment property is all based off the math. Sometimes we get people buying investment properties where they're talking about changing the taps and granite bench tops, and you're like, no, it's just math.
Yeah. And you might see this if you go, right, I want to live in a house that has a big backyard, for example, right? Got a couple of kids, like to roll the arm over, play a bit of BYC. So I want a big backyard.
Bouncing in it on Christmas Day.
Yeah. You're not renting out the backyard, and the majority of the value of the property, so the price that you're paying, is in the land, not the actual house itself. So you end up paying for this big block of land, renting out this relatively small house. So actually, the yield doesn't stack because you're paying too much, and then you're not getting the return based on what you're actually buying. So that can be one of the reasons why the yield just doesn't really stack up. Again, sometimes you see this in pure investment properties, but there will be a reason for it. For example, I am going to subdivide this land, right? Then you would take a lower yield up front because you plan to subdivide, and then you sell off the back section or build a house or do something like that. But for most people and for most properties, especially in major city centers, it's not usually the case, right? You're not buying a first home that has a piece of subdividable land on the back.
Yeah. So one thing we talked about was the rental yield, which is the income. The other big one I see is the costs. So you might live in a property and go, I pay the rates and insurance, but I don't really have to do that much stuff to the property on a day-to-day basis. And that's because you're living in the property and it's your money to fix it. However, if you're a tenant, those things you go like, it'd be nice to do, but I'm not going to, throw $3,000 or $4,000 at that thing.
Yeah.
Nah. The tenant is going, I want those things done, and your costs are much higher. The maintenance is much higher opposed to other types of investment properties.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right, James. There's a lot of costs in property. And again, if we look at your first investment property, a lot of the times they are new build townhouses, right? And a new build townhouse doesn't usually have a lot of those maintenance costs because, hey, what? It's new. So you don't have to replace the roof, replace the shower taps, replace this, fix this, So again, the costs start to add up and it takes away from the return on that property.
And I know people in the comment section will be going like, townhouses are bad investments. There's too many townhouses, all that kind of stuff. Yep, there are bad townhouse investments, but actually more the concept of a townhouse is the rent proportional to the land. That is the only thing when we talk about why townhouses mathematically are good investments, because yep, if you buy a huge section of land, it will go up more in value than a townhouse, but you will get crushed like the bug you are with those cash flow top-ups.
And let's talk about people being bugs and cash flow top-ups, right? Topping up an investment property. So what we mean by that is you get the rent that comes in. Let's say you're getting $600 a week. You've got the mortgage cost that goes out. Let's say that is $600 a week. You've got the cost to actually manage the property, call it $50 a week. You've got bills on top of that, call it $100 a week. Very quickly, you're having to top up the bank account to make sure that your rental property account can meet all of its rates invoices, insurance invoices. You got to pay the property manager. So you end up actually paying for this property, and that can actually be really tough, especially if those interest rates go up.
Yeah, for sure. So, Mike, we said 8 out of 10, which there's no actual back surveys to support that, by the way.
It's a vibes-based survey.
Yeah, we're a vibes-based economy over here.
Yeah.
The 2 out of 10 where it does make sense.
Yeah.
What are the things within it? Because obviously people are going like,
For a lot of people where that does make sense, sorry to cut you off, but a great one is people who bought new build townhouses under the KO lottery system.
They bought, specific.
I know, but
there's about 12 houses.
No. There was actually quite a few, and they bought them, and you couldn't rent them out for like 4 years. The National Party came in and was like, "That's ridiculous! Like, you can chop this in half." So basically, you couldn't sell them or rent them for like 4 years, or you had to pay like a cap gains tax on it or something. Basically, what happened is they got them for a 20% discount on the market, and then the government changed and they could rent them out or sell them. And because the loans are so low, a lot of these people are like hammering these mortgages down. They've got heaps of equity. They make really good investment properties. Some new build townhouses, again, make really good investment properties. Again, it's basically the characteristics of the home are difficult to point out. What you're really looking at is the yield.
Cash flow.
And again, there will be parts of the country where actually this doesn't matter and it's fine. If you improve the property, so turn it from a 2-bedroom into a 3-bedroom or something like that, the yield can be worth it. That's tricky in the major city centers. But yeah, like again, those 20% of properties, those first home buyers, they do exist.
Do you think there's the emotional connection to your first home as well, and people going like, "Oh, I don't really want to sell it"? Do you think that comes into it at all?
Oh, absolutely, like 100%. Do you know what I'd love to do? I'd love to do a podcast on the amount of couples that buy their first home and then break up within 6 months. We see it over and over again. It's wild.
Put break up in the comments if you want to see that
if
episode.
You want Mike to break up your relationship.
And if there is more comments than Mike's bloody like cliff property that was unrelated, we had like 50 people write cliffs in the comments.
And I can't talk about that until the sale's gone through. I did speak to the real estate agent. I was like, "Hey, do you mind?" She was like, "I do mind. Would you mind just like waiting until the sale's gone through? Then you can talk about it." So I will release that episode. I just have to wait a month or so.
Okay, all right. You have been warned. Look, buying more properties is, a great thing a lot of the time. Just make sure you are buying the right type of properties. Don't just hold your first home because it's easy or you're emotionally connected to the property and emotionally unavailable in the rest of your life. Make sure it makes sense. We'll wrap it up right there. Make sure to subscribe, like, review. We'll catch you next time.